The following video you're about to watch is a comprehensive deep dive about the ever so infamous Teen Mom franchise that aired on MTV from 2009 to currently, actually. It's a pretty long one. I suggest you split this video up into parts. You put your AirPods in and go start your chores and start listening to it that way. All my links are in the description, and anything else that you probably need is in the description. Thank you in advance for watching and tuning in, and I love you and appreciate you. Now to the video. All right, after like 5 tests, we're just gonna have to hope that this works, because if it doesn't, then we are SOL. Imagine that you are 16 years old and you live in a trailer somewhere in a rural state, probably a red state, and you get pregnant because there is no comprehensive sex education in your school district because the local government has taken money out of the schools and put it toward police. Things like arrests and jail visits and custody battles, the whole nine. As long as you let us film all that, we will pay you a very modest salary. And it's honestly in your best interest to keep having babies. Does that sound like a good offer? Does it sound like a good offer? Does it sound like a good? It's a pretty good offer. Like you can't say no. Like when blessings fall in your lap, like who are you to question God, right? You know, hey, this really happened in the 2000s, and it's a little show called 16 and Pregnant, created by, you guessed it, MTV, which stands for Music Television Network. So, you know, I honestly thought that this show was older than what it is, but it actually aired in 2009 all the way from 2009 to 2014, so about 5 years. Maybe there is something about this show that has a little spark to it, you know? I've been wanting to make a video about this show for God knows how long. I planned it, scrapped it, and I was like, whatever video I was going to make on it was going to be like incredibly long, because there's just so much to get into. Not 16 and Pregnant, however, Teen Mom is still in production, and different versions of the show Teen Mom. So after 16 and Pregnant aired, because 16 and Pregnant was specifically about documenting the lives and, you know, obviously pregnancies of the 16-year-old girls who they chose to focus on. Then once you did that, you got moved or like promoted or bumped up to Teen Mom, because that would just be a documentary on your life post-baby. 16 and Pregnant was pre-baby, and Teen Mom was post-baby. And obviously you didn't have to sign on for Teen Mom, but like, you know, money. Most of the 16 and Pregnant girls moved up from 16 and Pregnant and went on to Teen Mom. So that is a interesting little tidbit there. The first girl to be documented on 16 and Pregnant was Macy Bookout, and her baby daddy is like in and out of jail because he is on a few different substances. And obviously no hate to anyone struggling with substance abuse issues or like a substance abuse disorder, but he was genuinely a terrible person on and off substances. It didn't really matter that he did drugs, because he just was like a shitty person all around. And usually the baby daddy would be most likely older, or like a couple years older than the mother. And they would usually most likely be having some kind of like legal issues or be like abusive, or both. I can't think of one normal dad in the whole franchise, or one dad without any charges. The wonderful show, 16 and Pregnant, ran for 6 seasons and has a couple of spinoffs. And by a couple, I mean what looks like 8 or 9. So after 16 and Pregnant, we had Teen Mom. And then after Teen Mom, we had Teen Mom 2, naturally. After Teen Mom 2, you can probably fill in the blank, we had Teen Mom 3. And then after Teen Mom 3, you would have assumed we would get a Teen Mom 4, but you need to stay on your P's and Q's, because instead of getting Teen Mom 4, we get a whole new show that premieres in 2018, which honestly feels very late for a show like this, socially wise and like culturally wise. Teen Mom Young and Pregnant, which quite literally just documents like girls who are like 20, 21, 22, 23, around that age, dealing with unplanned pregnancies. They're all under 25, I'm pretty sure. After that, there's something called Teen Mom Young Moms Club, which I've never heard of, and I don't know what that is. Teen Mom Family Reunion, which was a desperate attempt to try and revive a series that has been dead for many, many, many years, in which they gathered all of the original cast, or as many as they could, and brought them on some kind of healing vacation in which they went to some island, I don't know where, and they did therapy like with each other and like their family members. It was really weird and felt like something that I shouldn't be in the room for. Teen Mom Girls Night In, which I'm pretty sure is like that same format that 90 Day Fiancé does, where they take cast members of the show and they sit them down to watch other cast members' segments of the show and comment on them. I'm like 100% sure that that's what that is for. I'm gonna try and figure it out soon for you. But yeah, you know, as you can see, MTV was milking this series for everything that it was worth and using minors as cash cows. And it's honestly really sick to look back on. And I think that many years later down the road, we will look at television like this as just absolutely depraved, as we look at shit like Maury now, where we're like, why the fuck did they put that on television, and how the fuck did they put that on television? But as you guys can tell on this channel, we like bad shit. Like, we like bad stuff, and we like to analyze that bad stuff. So, you know, this show is like a cultural landmark almost. It is a snapshot of the landscape that like America was in politically at the time. It is a really, really huge indictment on American education. It is a up close look at poverty. I do like that at least it does show like what happens after the children are born. So there are positive moments, but just kind of sprinkled in all of the drama and all of the melodrama. This is trash TV. Like, this is not anything, you know, justifiable. In season 1, which premiered in 2009, we had been introduced to Macy, Farrah, Amber, and Kailyn as well. I think that Macy, Farrah, Amber, and Kailyn arguably are the most 4 famous girls that came from the 16 and Pregnant series. So, first episode opens with Macy. She's supposed to be like your all-American girl. She's a cheerleader. It always starts off on a high note. They're always like, I had a bunch of friends. I do this. I play this sport. I get good grades. I'm very much living the normal life of a teenager. And here's my boyfriend doing some very dangerous things while I'm pregnant. And he is mean to me and treats me like shit on a stick. One gas station, a couple of, you know, restaurants, maybe here and there, 1 or 2 bars. You know everybody in the town. Very small population, under 1,000 people, like very small town. There's one big Walmart, and you know, that's pretty much it, and that's where the kids hang out. These towns are hotbeds for poor teenager behavior because there is simply nothing to do. A lot of the things that people will struggle with in this series, a lot of the teens struggle with, is drug use, because there is simply nothing to do but crack. Honest to God, so I grew up in the suburbs, like right outside of DC, so it's very like suburban metropolitan. There's always something to do. I cannot relate to the youthful experience of growing up in a town that is quite literally dead. There is nothing there. Setup for all of these problems like already existed, right? Like, there is an air of personal responsibility, yes, but that little piece of personal responsibility for teenagers is much smaller than adults because they simply just do not understand the impact of their actions. So all of these girls are quite literally a result of their environment and a product of their environment. They are quite literally victims, especially those who are dealing with things like parental drug abuse, parental neglect, drug abuse with their partner or spouse, drug abuse on their own, if they're dealing with poverty. Like, this is exploitation of the highest. There is a specific reason why MTV producers are going into bumfuck Ohio versus like Brooklyn, New York to find pregnant teenagers. Do you know what I mean? Like the rate of pregnant teenagers is probably most likely going to be higher in some dead Bible Belt town where they aren't teaching anything about sex ed at all because it's quite literally been lobbied by like crazy evangelical Christians. The rates of finding somebody whose story is interesting enough to put on TV is higher, right? I think something that was also really crazy about the show is that in addition to filming like these most intimate and private parts of your life, like they are also filming your fucking labor of your first child. Which to me would stress me out, number one. Number two, I am a minor and all of you are adults and I am pretty much naked in this room and you're watching me give birth for the first time and I'm in pain and I'm helpless and I'm stuck here on this bed and all these gross liquids are coming out of me and I just shit myself because I pushed too hard. Like, girl, I don't blame the girls. Like I said, they're products of their environment, right? And poverty makes a lot of decisions for you. Not to say that all these girls were impoverished, but some of them were likely close to it. Nobody on the show was at all wealthy, not until they got like to the end of Teen Mom 2, and after they had been on for a few seasons, you could see when the girls did start to get money. Like, they would buy new cars, they get their boobs done, you know, like they would be looking different, like all that kinds of stuff. All that stuff to me is very much like stuff you could also afford with, you know, like a standard high paying job. Like it's like they were making money, but they weren't making like enough money to be doing this, I think, in my opinion. She just picked a bad guy, which ended up causing all of her issues in her life. One thing I do notice is a lot of people in like the fan pages and stuff will say shit like, Macy really doesn't have anything going on other than Ryan, and it's absolutely true. And then they show Amber after that. So there's not much more that I have to say about the 16 and Pregnant franchise other than the fact that it was the jump start to all of these other franchises, and it it did create Teen Mom, which is the franchise that we have now, and somehow it is still going today in 2024, which just blows my mind because it's like, give those kids a break, maybe. I do think that the Teen Mom OG cast was pretty tame in comparison to Teen Mom 2. I think that's where we get most of our most like iconic and memorable scenes. The Kesha concert scene, the I need to smoke weed right now scene, these are all Jenelle scenes. I think in Teen Mom 2 is where things really start tipping into that dangerous, exploitative, shock value TV. And like I said, you can get away with a lot if you just call it a document. It's an interesting spot because when I think about like if someone actually offered me that, if I was actually in that position, I was 16 years old and I was able to say like, yes, I want to do this. I want to get paid $200,000 an episode to get all of these horrible parts of my life filmed and like a little bit of good parts just so they don't look so biased. I would probably say yes. It's a life-changing amount of money, right? And like I said, a lot of these girls are not coming from rich towns. They're coming from poor towns. So it's almost like, you know, you're between a rock and a hard place, right? Do I sell my life in exchange to have a better life? Still to this day, they kind of have to fight to see their daughter. and I think she's like about 14 or 15 now, so it's like a really just fraught, horrible thing that I just would not be filming. Farrah was also a wild card and kind of like a tabloid queen a little bit. I think that now, like when we look back on like the kind of stuff she did, it really wasn't that scandalous. She kind of was just like a goofy pre-Kardashian for a porn site. Like I said, sex work is work, so it's as if she like was doing another job. But there might have been like a breach of contract within there. So that's probably also why she was kicked off the show. Like that was probably like somewhere in the contract where it was like, please don't do porn. You know, she, does what she wants. Like that's very much Farrah's MO. Yeah, I never really thought that she was that interesting. I just kind of thought she was annoying. Her baby daddy is missing from this series because he passed away at some point, I think shortly after her child was born. Obviously, he is not able to be present for the show. She was one of those reality stars who did do something with her celebrity. Like she went on the Big Brother and she did do Dr. Phil. I do remember that. Couples therapy, celebrity Big Brother, botched. Marriage boot camp. At least she's self-aware enough to go on botched. And I think we covered everyone from the Team Mom OG cast. We talked about Macy, we talked about Amber, we talked about Farrah, and then we talked about, God, I'm blanking. Kailyn, who is also, like I said, the Teen Mom OG, like none of them I really were interested in. Like none of these stories I was really interested in. I think that the reason that this show did well is just because these were the original girls from the original cast, so obviously people had that natural curiosity about what happened to them in their lives and what was going to happen to them. Chelsea's boyfriend, very similar to Ryan. I honestly get them mixed up all the time. Not interested in being a parent, not interested in learning to be a parent, not interested in growing up, stuff like that. Whew. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Whoa. This is just a big one. 6 main cast members. There was a rotation. Originally, it started off with Jenelle, Kailyn, Leah, and Chelsea. So Chelsea ends up leaving, is replaced by Briana from Teen Mom 3. And I honestly don't think that the two are related at all.
Y'all don't hound anybody else about their baby dads the way that y'all talk to me about mine. That pressure me to talk about mine.
Really?
No. Hell no.
I think it's because mostly like the drama with like Chris and like.
I think it's less the drama and just the logistics almost. It's almost like you've got 4 boys, 3 dads, and a lot of moving around, a lot of moving pieces on how to move that life.
And I get that, and I want to share that part. I want to share all of it with you guys, but it makes me nervous.
Did you also do your podcasts when you stopped filming?
Yeah. I make more money podcasting than I do on Teen Mom.
I'm proud of all your success, but don't forget, this show made it possible.
Whereas Chelsea has gone on record saying like, I owe my child like a life of privacy at some point, and I spent enough time on the show and I don't really have anything to share anymore. She does, however, have a deal with HGTV. I've never checked it out, even though I love HGTV, but I'm not that big of a fan of the building of the houses. I'm more of a house shopper, interior type. But anyway, but Kail, it's a little bit different with her because even though she leaves the show, like we have no like shortage of information about her life because she continues to broadcast like on TikTok. So, that's why I said, like, I think that she wanted to have more control over her own narrative because she continues to share and continues to kind of tell her story under this new moniker, Kail and the Chaos. And she's entertained, like, coming back to TV, I guess, on her own accord. And, like, if she would have more control over, like, whatever the story is this time around, she kind of gives me like, and don't yell at me, but she kind of gives me like Kate Gosselin vibes where it's like, you know, where she very much could do a show where it's just her and the kids. Her story is pretty interesting. Like, she truly doesn't have any support. Her mom's an alcoholic, and I'm pretty sure her dad's an alcoholic too. Her mom has one foot in the door in the first season, and then we just like don't see her again, or like don't hear from her again. So Kail quite literally is like has no family. Like, when she has this child, she's in their house. So it's pretty bad. Like, it's pretty rough. Really empathized with her in the beginning there. Then her and Joe would fight back and forth. She puts her hand in a lot of different buckets. Like, she tries a lot of different things. She throws a lot of different things at the wall. Like, you know, fine, whatever. What went wrong was, I think, Javi. Because what happens to Kail is that she's with Joe, and then there's a little bit of dating like in between Joe and Javi. But when she meets Javi, like, she marries Javi, and she has Isaac like calling him dad, and she's like normalizing like his place in Isaac's life. And essentially what happens is, the rumors are that they both cheated on each other, which is pretty bad, and I do believe that. But the cheating on her part was pretty obvious in the show. Spoiler alert, her third baby daddy, who she meets, I think, in college while married to Javi. Obviously something weird was going on between those two, and then, you know, they ended up getting divorced. And then that was, you know, obviously a huge disruption in a child's life. But anyway, so after that happens, she ends up being with Chris. So she has a child with Javi. So now she's up to 2. So she has Isaac with Joe. And then with Javi, she has Lincoln. And then with Chris, who I think she had the most volatile relationship with, she has 2, which, so lucky. Meets another guy, because they were never like officially together. They just, I think, were just, and I think that she had feelings. Not that I know these people. After Chris, she moves on to a guy named Elijah, who by this time she's off the show. She's just kind of posting like the back of his head, like on like Instagram and stuff. Everyone's like, this guy looks like super young. And these are the comments. But yeah, she has one with him as well.
Does baby Elijah exist? Absolutely not. There is no baby Elijah.
So, and also, like, you have to think about like sibling dynamics, right? Like, I can't possibly understand a custody plan between one mom it just didn't, it's just like a very, I don't like to say the word broken home, because it's like, wouldn't you want everyone kind of like in one place all the time, especially siblings, you know, they kind of, you know, grow up together. That's kind of like the point of like having a sibling. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Okay, fix the lighting. That's the hardest part about filming some of these videos, dude, is like sitting in front of this light for this long is like, it'd be killing me sometimes, you know. Where were we? We were talking about Kail. Okay. I would say that Kail is probably one of the Teen Mom favorites. She's got a pretty big, dedicated following. I don't personally like her too much. I'm not like crazy about her. I think that honestly, there's really no one in this series who I'm a fan of, to be completely honest, where I'm like, I really like that person. I don't really find any of them particularly likable, but that's really not the point of the show. Toward the end of her time in Teen Mom 2, she kind of becomes a little bit difficult to work with, but I think that that's because she was over the show. She gets a lot of criticism from the cast, not the cast, well, some people in the cast, Briana, and she gets criticism from fans and viewers about being like very private, I guess, with her life. Like it's like why are you on the show if you don't want to share anything, is essentially what people were asking. And then she ended up leaving the show. So there you go. She
When I got Isaac's haircut.
What about it?
I want to know why you said what you said.
I told you why. When he goes over there, you have him dress a certain way, you have him look a certain way, you have his hair cut a certain way, and that's not who he is. I think you forget about the fact that he's half white and he's half Hispanic. Like, I feel like you dress him in a stereotypical way, and I don't like it.
I don't understand what your description of how I dress him is. Like, you're not describing.
You dress him
this is
like a thug.
I thought was really strange and really indicative of some bigoted views. And so after that, I was like, yeah, I can't trust her. Even though that was a while ago, you know, I don't think that she's ever talked about it or like dissected it or, you know, like even like brought it up again. It's a really like horrible thing to be said about your own child on television, and it's racist. So, and Joe tried to gently tell her that, and she basically like was like, Joe, shut up.
I've even heard people say like, oh, I really want to have mixed kids, you know, when they find out that my husband is white. Side note, not all biracial people are a mix of black and white. There are so many different types of mixes that don't even include white people, like two people of color. But of course, speaking as a black woman that's in a relationship with a white dude, that's the perspective that I'm coming at this topic from. So please take that into account. So this idea that being partially white is somehow more attractive or more desirable basically says that blackness is not attractive or desirable, and that's messed up. People say these types of things. Generally speaking, I think they're coming from a good place, but it's important to remember, again, that intent does not change impact, and also that we live in a world that holds up these oppressive ideas. And so these are things that people internalize without even realizing it and then project them onto each other. So I don't think that people that say this to me think all black people are ugly or like hate, you know, people of color. And this is not a new concept, this idea that whiteness is more preferable or more attractive. Look at slavery. I mean, you would have biracial or light-skinned slaves that were a result of rape, and they would get preferential treatment.
I would argue that there's like a little bit of like racial fetishization going on here, right? Like it's kind of weird pattern to have where all your kids are mixed, but yet you hold and harbor kind of like, you know, views like that is like a little bit like, ooh, like, ugh. But I mean, hey, she could have changed. Maybe she doesn't think like that anymore. But I mean, like, you know, it would be nice to hear. So that's my beef with her. My other beef is that she's very much an influencer mom. Like all of the kids have. It's just strange, like especially if your kid is like, you know, unable to like fully read and write. I don't understand it, but they all have Instagram handles. There was a post or something recently in the past, like there's so much that goes on and this just popped up in my brain, so forgive me for the fuzzy details, but in the past, there was a post recently where somebody had made some you know, internet stranger like me had made some like really ignorant comment about one of her kids' like haircuts or something. I can't remember. Part of me is thinking like, okay, so this should be like a wake up call for her to stop sharing so much of those kids on the internet. Like stop giving strangers like so much access to your kid, you know, because part of her like comment back was like, this is a kid that you're talking about, you're commenting on like the way a kid looks, and it's like that person doesn't care, number one. Number two, you can quite literally control that. Like you are in charge of like how much of your children and your family she is continuing the cycle of child exploitation that, you know, we are so desperately trying to end when we talk about these family channels and these mom influencers and these people who put their kids online. But yeah, anyway, I think that her biggest business venture is just her podcast. She has Coffee Combos, which is with the famous Lindsay Chrisley, who I did not know, based on last names. For some reason, I just did not put two and two together, that she was related to Todd Chrisley and like that whole Chrisley family, like the people who just went to jail for tax evasion or whatever. How the two know each other. I don't listen to the podcast. So the other podcast is Baby Mama's No Drama, I think, or is it Baby Mama's All Drama, with V, who is Joe's wife and Isaac's stepmom. And V is Joe's new girlfriend from like the very, very, very beginning of the series. And even the girl, so like she just was in her feelings. Kail really, she brought in the views, dude. Like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, she's bringing in the views because she just had so much shit going on. Leah's story is very interesting as well because she gives birth to twins, which I think would be doubly traumatic, especially as a teenager. You know, you're already giving birth to one child. Imagine like your first time having sex, you not only get pregnant, but you get pregnant with twins. Jesus Christ. Corey is a pretty decent guy. She does cheat on him, like, I think 2 times. It's not funny, but it's like, why? You know, like, like, he's nice. But I think that also it goes both ways. I think there might have been some infidelity on his part too, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do know for sure that there was on her end because she did admit to it. They're in the very beginning of Teen Mom 2, and they have 2 twins, obviously, because twins are a set. Duh, Kai. But their story is pretty interesting in the beginning, and them dealing with the complications that come with raising a disabled child. And then they document, like, you know, the way that Leah and Corey talk to Allie about Leah's disabilities and like her, you know, like kind of range of ability and like what she can and can't really do. So that part is actually pretty interesting to me, and an interesting part to document. I think that those two are really good parents together. I think that there was breakdown during the divorce because obviously like people's feelings were hurt and it's hard to probably co-parent when your feelings are hurt. But yeah, I think that they did pretty well with those 2 girls. You know, Leah, she's someone to me who just seems kind of like misguided in a way. Like, she's not malicious, I feel like, but she's more like, I don't really know what decision to make. And I do remember in the beginning of the show, she said something like, oh yeah, you know, like getting pregnant young is kind of like normalized in my family.
That were ordered by the court. As you know, Corey and his attorney have made some allegations against you, that you were involved in drug use, and right. The judge said if this test comes back positive, he's going to consider changing custody. Also did an extended opiate test, and the things that it tested for were methamphetamines, cocaine, codeine, heroin, things of that nature. And each of those have come back basically negative, meaning none of the drugs listed were even detected at all in your system. Okay. That means you've passed, obviously, and you've maintained this
in the beginning of the show. There's a few scenes, I think, just like a handful of scenes where she is kind of like just dozing off in conversation, and I think that she said that she was prescribed pills for, I think it was a pain issue or something like that. And she just ended up kind of getting addicted to them.
Figure out this divorce stuff and trying to get ready to leave and go away for a little while to work on myself. I don't want anybody to know where I'm going, really. And trying to make sure Corey's happy and...
Yeah.
And In the beginning of the series, Corey and his new girlfriend kept saying that she was on something, and I kept thinking like that they were both wrong, and I was like, yeah, she would never, like, this is so like out of character for her. Like, I was like, she would never do nothing like that, like, not my Leah. But then she admitted to it, and I was like, oh shit. Jesus Christ. But I mean, if you watch in the beginning of the show, her life is, on top of dealing with the fact that like she has 2 kids, she's dealing with one who is disabled. So, that adds like another layer of stress, and also financial stress to her. So that also could have been one of the incentives to staying on the show for her as well, was the fact that like Allie's bills and like her, her medical needs were quite literally adding up and becoming an expense that was hard to handle. So I mean, like, it makes sense that she stayed on the show. I don't blame her. Do what you gotta do, girl, under capitalism, because sometimes you just gotta do it, I guess. After Corey, she moves on to a guy named Jeremy. Yeah, so they have Addie in 2013. And after that, they end up getting married, and then they get divorced after 3 years. And Jeremy worked one of those blue collar jobs. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was one of those jobs where, and I think that this is the case for a lot of blue collar jobs, where you have to like quite literally go away for like a month or something, or like a few weeks, and they like put you in a motel or a hotel or something like near whatever the job site is. I think they do this for like linemen and like welders and like other types of people, whatever. But yeah, those jobs are quite literally very demanding, and they pull you away from your family. He was quite literally absent like a lot. So her getting full custody, with him getting visitation rights, not at all surprised, because he quite literally, like, his job demanded that he be away. In 2021, the show is in, I think it's 11th season, maybe, I think. And Teen Mom Family Reunion is being filmed, or starting to be filmed, or something like that. I don't know. They're getting ready to film it. I don't have the exact dates. Whatever. That's when she starts dating this guy named Jalen, and apparently he was in the military, and he's like a really stand-up guy, and blah, 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 whatever. First of all, don't date nobody who was in the military. Red flag for me, personally. Oh my God. Okay. Let's talk about Briana, because Briana, I feel like we kind of skimmed over, and I was going to talk about her after Jade and after Ashley, but she was on the show before Jade and before Ashley, so I should talk about her first. She was on Teen Mom 3 for a hot second, and then I don't know, I don't understand what happened here. But somehow she ends up going from Teen Mom 3 to Teen Mom 2, which is almost like a backwards move, and I don't exactly remember why they did that. I don't know. Briana is like, like, I think that she gets a lot of hate from the show's fan base. Briana gets on the show, and like the other girls, I think she's around 16 or 17 when she has her first child, who is Nova, with a guy named Devon, or Devon. I don't know. How do you say his name? I think it's just Devon. And she lives in Florida. She's the only one who is not from one of those like dead Appalachian or like New England towns. So it's kind of a fresh reprieve from all that, a nice fresh break. But, like I said, she doesn't come from money either, but also she doesn't really seem like she's in a financial spot like Kail was in, or like Leah was in, or like, some of those other girls in the very beginning were in. And she has a support system, her mom and her sister, and they live together pretty much for the entire duration of the show. And if they're not living together, then they are like, always together anyway. So like she has a pretty decent support system, I'd say, and a good support network. So both Jade and Ashley came from Teen Mom Young and Pregnant. Jade came on the show to replace Jenelle, and she was confirmed in May 2019. Ashley comes on the show to replace Chelsea, and she's confirmed in December 2020. Her sister, who is, I don't know if she's older or younger than her, but her sister, Brittany, who is also featured on the show pretty often, had also gotten pregnant similarly to her around the same time and same age, but she actually chose to have an abortion instead. So their story is really interesting because you're quite literally watching like the results of two completely separate decisions, right? Like you're watching like the results of like deciding to keep the child, and you're watching like the results of like deciding to go through with the abortion. Like it's quite literally very interesting. Like inadvertently, by allowing Brittany to tell that story, I think that MTV would like inadvertently kind of pushed like a pro-choice narrative there, because they were like, well, look at Brittany's life. Like she's living like a normal life as she would have had she not gotten pregnant in the first place. And it's just really interesting to watch. And it's also interesting because it's like, because she does not have kids, she has much more time and much more energy than Briana has, and she's able to be there for Briana's kids. So it ends up working out in the end, because it's like there's less children around and you're able to be around for the children who need you. So it's perfect. Just think it was a decision that ended up working out, and as obviously you could tell by the door. Sorry, it's over there. You can tell by the door. Obviously this is a pro-choice channel, so I mean, like, I don't find any fault with Brittany's decision at all, or Briana's decision. Like I don't find any fault with either. That's what being pro-choice means. Jenelle. I mean, a lot of the girls, I give them their flowers for trying, but it's like Jenelle is like the equivalent of Jenelle is like the equivalent of like, go girl, give us nothing, like she quite literally is giving us nothing for most of the show. She starts out the show by signing away custody of her child to her mother, because she is not in any way capable or able to raise a child, which is probably the most responsible thing that she's done in the whole series. So that's not great. And she very much is like always in a screaming match with her mother, who obviously is not perfect either, but Jenelle had a lot more support than she thought in the beginning, because the fact that she even was able to sign custody away of her child to, number one, someone who she could trust and not a total stranger, aka her mother, is a huge privilege in itself. Like, it's like you did not have to give that child up for adoption. You know that you were not ready to raise that child, and you did not want to raise that child. So in the beginning of the series, she does admit that, like, she is not in any place to raise a child. So her first child is Jace, and his father's name is Andrew, and she's not with him very long after the birth. After him, I'm pretty sure we go to Nathan. No, after him, we go to Kiefer. So we get all the Jenelle and Kiefer drama, and it's a lot to watch. It's both of them are just doing drugs together, and she's just kind of in and out of Jace's life at this point, and he's like a bit of a toddler, I think, around this age. Yeah, I think he's like toddler age. And then after that, she's with a guy named Nathan, and there's abuse in that relationship, and she ends up having to call the police on him. He gets locked up a few times, I think, and the neighbors call the police on them, I think. So that's another toxic relationship that she enters into, and she ends up having a child with him named Kaiser. And then after they break up, she moves on to David, And David is probably the worst one out of all of them. And he and Nathan end up going at it a few times. And I'm always on Nathan's side. I wanted Nathan to beat his ass so bad. I was like, Nathan, I know you have it in you. I know you do. Yeah, so after that, she goes to be with David. And then David and her have a child named Inslee. And then after her and David get married is when I think she really starts to pursue having custody of Jace, because she wants like this perfect family picture. Okay, I completely forgot that she did get married actually before David. So Jace is born in August 2009 with Andrew. He's rarely seen on the show. And she quite literally like signs custody over shortly after his birth. And Barbara takes custody of him when he's like less than 9 months old, to prevent him from going into foster care, naturally. And Jenelle gets custody back of Jace, but not until March 2023. So it takes 8. To give you just a snapshot of the type of men that she goes for, okay? David has 2 kids also from a previous relationship. We see one of those kids, Marissa. She's in the show, and the other one is a son named Kailyn, and I don't think we ever see him. And the first time that the police are called on him is in 2018 for a physical assault on Jenelle. This phone call was captured on camera, and it is available on YouTube. MTV released the footage, and it's quite literally Jenelle like crying into the phone, and she tells the police that her and her husband got into a fight, and he pinned her down, and she heard something crack, and she thinks it was her collarbone. After this incident occurs and she's questioned about it by Barbara, she completely downplays it, which is something that she does very often in the show. She downplays really horrific and horrible things that happen to her, or her kids, or things that she's done. And she says that they got into a fight and there was drinking, and they fell on each other, or he fell on her, something like that. Another thing that David did that was horrible was he in 2019 there was an incident with their dog Nugget, in which I think the dog like nipped at the daughter Inslee, and it was reported that not only did he shoot the dog, but he also beat the dog, and that eventually led to the official firing of him. Oh my god, is that my cat? It is. Yeah, that officially led to the official firing of him from the show. So also probably like crucial to like their decision in letting her go from the show too, because like it's different with the other girls who kind of were just dealt a bad hand and actually trying to improve their lives. Jenelle was like actively making things worse. Like it's really insane to watch. To describe Jenelle, or to summarize Jenelle's life is what your life looks like when you put men before and above all else. Like when you live a male-centered life and you put men before your kids, before your family, before anything. This is what your life will most likely look like. Not to say that she deserved any of the abuse that she was a victim of, no. But her hands are not clean either. And she also has perpetuated abuse and has stood by while abuse has happened to her own kids and animals. And so, you know, while being a victim, she's victimized others as well. So it's just like a complicated situation kind of all around. And she's really difficult to root for. And she gets called out by Colin Kaepernick's wife one time for a very racist post about his protest when it was really popular back when he started kneeling during the national anthem and everyone started losing their minds. And so she's got some pretty bigoted views as well, which is another reason why nobody roots for her. But yeah, Jenelle, Jenelle, the show as it currently exists in time has completely lost the plot, and I think that it's just struggling to survive in a post teen pregnancy epidemic world, right? Like, we're no longer living in those years where teen pregnancy was this, big epidemic and this crazy, scary boogeyman. Like, we have the resources now, and we have the education, and we have the means to be able to deal with this problem, and we've dealt with it because the numbers have come down. Statistics have shown that we are not in any type of teen pregnancy epidemic currently. And honestly, I don't even know if we were ever in an epidemic of it. I think that it was happening a lot at one point, but I don't believe that it was ever an epidemic, because I feel like I would have looked around and seen some pregnant teens, and in my 4 years of high school, I only ever saw one pregnant teenager, and they were in summer school with me, and they were not even in my school. So that, I feel like, speaks to many different things, like class especially, and especially like location. Like I said, in these rural towns, things are much different, and where I grew up, it really wasn't like that. So it could have been different had I grown up in a different area in the country. Maybe different areas of the country were experiencing these epidemics, but like I said, these were human caused epidemics, if they ever were, right? Because we were doing things like not funding comprehensive sex education. We had evangelical Christians running local governments, so they were bulldozing over any opportunities to educate children on sex and sex education. And we just have a culture of misogyny, sexism, and patriarchy that all exacerbates these pre-existing issues. And then we have all these socioeconomic issues that also exacerbate these pre-existing issues. So when we talk about things like being pro-choice, and when we advocate for abortion rights, and we advocate for the right to choose, it is to deal with and mitigate these socioeconomic issues that the country refuses to deal with. We don't want to force anybody who does not want to have a child to have a child. Doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the situation, it doesn't matter, nothing matters. Only the choice matters. It does not matter why they're making the choice. You could have 6 abortions a month. I don't give a fuck. I want you to be able to make that choice. I do. Like, that is my goal. So I have moved on from saying that I'm pro-choice, because I feel like that doesn't hit the nail on the head anymore. I just say that I'm pro-abortion, like flat out. Like I support abortion, like as a medical procedure, and I support it morally, and I support it like as a principle. Like I quite literally, I obviously support a woman's right to choose, but I want to go a step further and say I support abortion. And this entire show is proof and explanation as to why. Like we quite literally are able to see what happens when you choose abortion versus what happens when you choose to keep the child. When it came to Brittany and Briana's story, we quite literally got to see it. So why are we not able to make sure that every woman is able to make that choice for herself nationwide? Point blank, period. Then you'd run out of shit to exploit, I guess. Oh man, I really didn't think I would finish filming this video today, but my god, I think that that's it, dude. I've got so much shit to edit, and I am proud of this video and the fact that I kept going with it, because many times I was just gonna quit and just not finish it. But there's something about finishing the stuff that you start and the stuff that you make. And even if you didn't make it this far, I don't even care. I'm just happy that I made it this far, you know? Links to everything in the description, links to my stores in the description. Cool shit's coming back because it is about to be fall. Holidays are approaching, so get your wallets up, get your money up, because cool shit's gonna be coming back to the shop. And check that shit out. Follow me on Twitter for any more updates, and that's really it. I thank you for watching, and thank you for leaving comments. Everybody who comments about like sound feedback, I thank you so much, because I want to know like what it sounds like to you guys. I am able to obviously watch the video back myself and watch it, through YouTube's playback. But when you guys are like, oh, this sounds like this, or this could sound a little bit better, then I know how it sounds to another human and not just to my ears. So thank you for all the sound comments, because I need them. Thank you so much. Like, I'm not offended, like, not at all. Like, I will take the constructive criticism, girl. Like, give it to me. I want to hear. Yeah, that's all I got for today. I don't know what my next topic will be, but like I always say, you can always send me one via Twitter, Instagram, or you can even just like comment on the video. I don't care. But as I always say, I have a list of topics, and then, usually something comes up and strikes my fancy. But like I said, thank you. And, we'll be back at it again soon, hopefully, when I have another break from work. Because capitalism is kicking my ass.